Welcome, everybody, to Event Marketing Redefined. I am your host, Matt Kleinrock, CEO of Rockway Exhibits and Events. I appreciate everybody taking time out of their day to come and listen. So today, I have Frank Moran with me he is the founder of the Experiential Group, and they are an experiential activation company out of Brooklyn, New York. And very excited today. And what we're going to do is go into some actual jobs, experiential activations that they've created. I'm going to share my screen. So if you're on with us here today, you're going to be able to see some of this stuff and really navigate through what Frank and his company do, because I think they do an excellent job. So Frank, welcome, my friend. Thank you for being here.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
It's nice having a fellow New Jerseyan as well. We get picked on a lot. So
got to represent.
All right.
Best state in the nation.
I think there'd be a lot of argument on that, but I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you. All right, let's rock and roll here. I am going to share my screen. I know sometimes it takes a second, but it should be up by now. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll through about 5 experiential, we'll call them activation, jobs, productions that Frank and his company has put on. Frank is going to talk on them. I'm going to ask some questions. And really, we just want to have an excellent conversation around experiential marketing, experiential activations, the value of them, the future of them. So let's get rocking and rolling here. So first one, Frank, is a activation that you did for Bombay Sapphire. Having gone through these, I can tell you this is my favorite one. The first one you sent me is the one I fell in love with. So why don't you talk on this and kind of walk everybody through what we're looking at here and what you guys did?
Yeah, for sure. This was a Bombay project. We worked with one of our partner agencies, BBDO. We often work with some of more traditional shops to execute some of the experiential arms and legs of their campaigns. But the whole concept here was Bombay had this tagline called Stir Creativity, trying to kind of connect themselves to the art world, but in a kind of novel way. The concept ended up being, a little bit of like an anti-Sotheby's or Christie's auction type of a format. It's not just about who has the deepest pockets or $1 billion to go buy the art that they want. This was a auction where the art actually went home to the biggest fan or the person that liked the artwork the most. So super fun project. It was very, an interesting problem to solve. We love those. We love when a client's like, hey, could this be done? Like, any idea how we could figure this out? Like that our ears really perk up whenever those kinds of questions come up or those types of projects. So this one, they wanted to measure how someone liked the artwork in a quantitative way. We played with a bunch of different ways, like, lie detector tests, and took them up with different technology. We ended up landing on using EEG headsets, which read like brainwaves, a pulse ox or oximeter reader that detects like kind of their heartbeat, even like a hand perspiration. And then we would unveil this piece of art to the guests. It was a mixture of like consumers and some media on the first night. And whoever had the most kind of visceral reaction to seeing the artwork for the first time, we created this like algo that kicked out real-time visualizations that you could see not only like, on the computer screen, but also in the entire room. The whole room was projection mapped for those that can't see it at home, if you're just listening. And we were able to tell who kind of liked the art the most. Again, it was mostly like this, the physical reaction to seeing it, which is pretty neat. And then the person or persons that had the highest reaction to that art actually went home with it. So super fun. Obviously there was, Bombay martinis, which were delicious on site as well. And, party and an opening and all that. But yeah, this is really, it was authentic for the brand. It delivered on their, trying to be juxtaposed next to the kind of the art community, and had a really nice, both from like organic, guests that were there, some of the media that were there, got some kind of mainstream pickup. I think, we've got some impressions numbers in there, and, we won a couple of awards for this as well. What we got? EX Award, Adweek Experiential, Clio, et cetera. So it's the
impressions are big. I think, Frank, this is great work. Like, I love this. And for anybody that can't see this, or if you're listening to this on podcasts, essentially, this is a decent sized room. It has a bar in it. And it does have, as Frank said, it has like projection around the room. It's a dark room. And then there is a space in the back where there's a platform, somebody sitting with the equipment you described on their head and the artwork up on the wall to catch their sensory reaction, right? So it's a very cool setting. It's like an event. I put a couple notes on this, Frank. Like I love the sensory, not the monetary award for artwork, right? And what I think is cool about this in experiential is my thought is always like, hey, how can you contradict the norm? How can you play devil's advocate? How can you play spoiler a little bit? How can you do something different? This is really flipping the norm. Art is a little stuffy. Art is, the richest person in the room can buy the art. And then just in general, what I like applaud you guys doing here is it's not tone deaf at all. It is like, I'm thinking, it's like art scene, an event, Bombay. It's engaging. It all goes together. There's nothing here that's out of the norm while doing something unique. I think this is really, really well done. Very experiential.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And that's always that like balance of like, you want to do something that's kind of out there or that never been done, but make sure it ties back to the brand. Like the last thing you want to do is do this really cool thing. People walk away like, oh my God, that was so cool. And they're like, wait, what was that for? Who paid for that? Like, what was the takeaway? Making sure that it's kind of naturally interwoven within the brand's kind of messaging at the moment or what the brand stands for, not just doing something that's kind of novel for novelty's sake.
Yeah, we talk a lot about here, and I preach this on the show all the time, that whether it's an activation, trade show, booth, event, whatever it may be, is we have a bit of a framework here to coming to being creative. And like number one is the why, the intention, understanding why someone wants to do something. Number two is the customer, having a good feel for the audience. Number three is the brand. That's that being on brand, just all the things you kind of just described. The fourth is the goals, right? And understanding those four things. And then much of everything that you create has to tie back to those in some way. Because I think a lot of people get real in love with sitting in a room and just throwing ideas up against the wall, right? This one's awesome. Let's go to the next one, which is the Landshark mobile hot tub. This is something that I think is super cool. Is in Key West. For anybody that cannot see it, the term mobile hot tub literally is exactly what this is. There are people looking like they're having the time of their life on vacation in a mobile hot tub that's branded Landshark. So I'll let Frank kind of take it from here on that.
Nice. Yeah, this is a fun one. Again, outside the box. I know that's a bit of a cliche term. Clients Landshark, this is the beer that Jimmy Buffett built. It's the most laid back beer brand that there is. And the idea here was to give the most laid back kind of rides. So think like Uber, if Jimmy Buffett was designing the Uber experience. So we gave folks rides up and down Duval Street. If you've ever been to Key West, that's where kind of Sloppy Joe's, all the big kind of bars are. It's the big kind of drag for Party Town USA, which is Key West. We also gave rides up and down Lazy Way, which is a side street over near the wharf where Jimmy Buffett's recording studio is. So that was, again, very on brand. This thing was an undertaking. It was a fully functioning hot tub on wheels. There was 5,000 pounds of water in it. You were able to control and steer the hot tub from inside of it. There was with a joystick, which was obviously a 3D printed beer bottle of Landshark. There was an onboard generator, bubbles, the whole nine. And then, the fun part was really getting that permit from the city of Key West, who sees a lot of interesting things. But when we called their permitting department, they're like, well, you stumped us. We've not heard this request before.
That's awesome.
Get kind of permissions and, a little police escort to make sure that it was safe because, this isn't really a roadworthy vehicle. But yeah, super fun. And we gave people rides up, to their next bar or, down to the wharf or down to the beach. And people really loved it. And again, it was, a little bit crazy, a little bit wild, left field. That whole concept of the most laid back rides kind of tied back to the brand. And, great social pickup. People were crazy about this thing. It still lives on and gets brought out to shows here and there. It was super fun.
What I really liked about this when I saw it was the complexity, but the simplicity, right? It is so on brand for me, right? And that's kind of what I talked about just prior, was having a framework, having a foundation for like the way that you create and get creative. But like this, if anybody knows Landshark, like this is the most on brand thing that you could possibly do. Like it's so on brand. It's ridiculous. The Keys is an on brand location. And then the other thing I love about this, Frank, and what I think is really vital when it comes to event marketing, brand activations, experiential, whichever term you want to use, is you're going to where the customer already is in their day-to-day, they don't have to go somewhere to engage. They're being engaged with something that brings them value, fun, anything along those lines.
Yeah, it's a good point. And that, maybe the folks that were experiencing it firsthand were maybe already fans of Key West, of Jimmy, of the beer, even potentially, but experienced by few, seen by many, that social amplification being seen by the rest of the folks around the country that might be following them, or some of the media pickup. So yeah, we were like targeting we went to the home of Jimmy Buffett and kind of the brand, but it was with the idea and with the purpose of kind of spreading that out to other markets where we weren't, targeting them that day. That's it. We were talking about CFOs, I think, before the call really started. And that's another thing just to remember, like, it's not just how many people had their butts inside of the hot tub, but how many people passersby on the street, how many folks, all the, the articles online, all that stuff. I know this is like fairly obvious, but it helps to, justify the expense and just really focusing on hitting those KPIs and moving the needle for Landshark, not just, in Key West where it's probably a layup, but, nationwide.
You know what I think is so smart about what you said, Frank, and I think what is a big piece of experiential marketing and what you all did here is I posted something on LinkedIn forever ago. It was around Christmas time. I was flying, I don't know where. I sat down to get some work done. And where I sat down at the Jacksonville airport, there was a display that they had created for the holidays. And it was Santa with like sunglasses, looked like he was beached out, right? Because Jacksonville is a bit of a beach town. And then he had like his sled, and he had all these strains that he was holding to, and he was on a surfboard, and like the reindeer, I believe, were dolphins. And it was it was a pretty cool setup. And I sat there and I noticed it when I walked by. I was like, oh, that's cool. But what I did notice was I sat there and worked for about 90 minutes. There was a person every minute who took a picture of that activation, right? So you're creating something that is engaging, that is getting impressions, that is thought-provoking, that is being shared. So the kind of the multiplication on it is pretty big. We got a question here. So Bernie, hello, sir, man. Good to have you here. Thanks for coming on. Bernie says, was there any music being played while riding around?
We had kind of a home base. You can see in the top right image for those that are viewing live. And we did have music there. It was a mixture of, Margaritaville favorites, a lot of Jimmy during the ride. Actually, part of they were pretty cool about permitting and pretty flexible. Amplified music was not one of the things we were able to do. We didn't have it in the hot tub. Maybe next time we'll get one of those waterproof portable speakers and have it float.
Very cool. Question from Alan Goldman, Frank. It said, did TXG develop the creative concept, or was the hot tub idea brought to you to fabricate and activate?
This is a great question. This is one where the concept of the hot tub that gave people rides came from the agency, so the larger traditional agency. And then it was on us to figure out how to kind of engineer how, where could we drive this thing? So the concept holistically, 30,000 feet was provided, and we were more, zhuzhing in the back and forth. Most times, even when the creative concept comes from an agency, there's still going to be that involvement from our team and the kind of back and forth of like taking it from the drawing board to reality. There's a lot of different iterations. I don't think I've ever seen a project kind of like come in and get produced exactly as spec'd, just because of the, whether it's permits or, timelines, budget. Like sometimes it's the laws of physics. I'm like, hey, render, that's really beautiful, but like there's nothing supporting that. So we need to make it 2 feet by 2 feet to fit, the jacks or the trussing or whatever. So this one, the top line concept came again, was part of a larger nationwide traditional campaign, and we executed the experiential bits.
Nice. Very cool. All right, let's go to the next. So Maybelline, the Maybelline Avatar May. So this has a little bit of a tech feel to it, which is something you guys dabble in a lot, right? So talk to us about this Maybelline New York Avatar May activation.
Yeah. Where to start? We made our own little person here during COVID, during another pandemic project. And the fun part was my wife got pregnant as we started making May. So it was like a simultaneous, she was making a real person and we were making this digital version. Anyway, it started as a New York Fashion Week brief from Maybelline. It was 2020, I believe. We were RFP'd in a bunch of other agencies. Our response to the RFP essentially was, a metaverse, before metaverse was a household name, version of New York Fashion Week. That's at Spring Studios and Tribeca. We're going to have folks being able to like sit front row and go backstage and do virtual AR try-ons. And even like, one of the concepts was to have an avatar version of Gigi Hadid where like consumers could actually interact with her, like AI. This is 2 years ago. It's pretty novel, pretty different. None of this kind of really had been done by a brand, at least. There was a digital influencer called Lil Michaela. She was kind of like the first digital influencer, if anybody is familiar with her. She crushes, she's pretty great. But the concept was well received. Maybelline loved it. We were awarded the work. We went and priced out this full kind of build out. It was a big build. It was, $1.5 million plus. And the budget just wasn't there to go full bore and build out this entire experience. They still loved our thinking and loved our approach. So they did contract us to build the avatar version of this campaign. Mm-hmm. And so that's where an event company turned into more of a digital social ask. And we created May, using a mixture of, a bunch of different software, Maya, Arnold, Unreal Engine, which I'm sure a lot of folks know. The bill, I don't know how far you want to get into like the nuts and bolts, but top line, it was like, we found a model that our clients liked the general version, the general vibe of her body type. We did a motion capture scan, like a scan of her body with, I think it's like 45 different cameras. We then digitized that version. We found a voice that we liked. We did vocab, and we're creating like, animated videos of this digital persona. And the concept really was to create a new version, a new spokesperson for Maybelline. So Gigi's one, nice. There's a number of others. The thing we always like to joke about is like this spokesperson will never, get a DUI or show up on page doing something silly unless we want her to. We can always make her do that, but kind of a safe bet, never late for a shoot, all that kind of fun stuff. And it's been a fun process. The top left image, you actually see Gigi. So funny enough, May and Gigi did, it went from being a Gigi avatar to being our own persona, but we did launch her with a TVC where Gigi and May were interacting in this video for Fall Seeds, which is, a lashes product just a month ago, actually. Nice. She launched. Very cool. Super fun one, very different. And again, like, as you mentioned, we've always been very interactive forward. We always love peppering in technology into our events. It helps for that amplification standpoint, whether it's, a cool AR component or, interesting photo ops. So we've always been really into that stuff. And then during COVID, it just really was something we were able to put the pedal to the metal a little bit and invest internally in some of these technological advances in order to bring some of these fun things to life.
Love it. Love it. I think the tech side of things, what's capable, with CGI, with the computer generated imagery, and now AI and the metaverse and the combination of a lot of these things. I think there's a lot of language out there that people don't fully understand, but I think marketers and people in our space need to get familiar with it and need to get an understanding of what is possible, because you will start to see this stuff. The smart marketers are asking questions to their agency, to their partners, right? They're asking, what can we do with this? How does this work? I saw this the other day. What can we do? And I think that's really important moving forward, because there is so much cool stuff that is happening and that is going on. And digitally, there's a lot of promise for what can be done effectively in a business, B2B, B2C type world in marketing and sales. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, especially like in the last 3 months, there's been API that's been launched. That's like, you or I, or anybody listening at home could kind of access on a kind of prosumer level. That makes a lot of the process we did over the last 2 years, like by hand and pixel by pixel, so much easier, so much faster. And you say some of the B2B stuff, like, if you're a trade show person at home, like maybe it's going to be a digital avatar, greeter at your booth, or somebody that you want to be able to, we've all seen the chatbots, which for the last 5 years have been, fairly clunky, but being able to like interact with, a digital version of a person with ChatGPT, the response time's almost real time. The answers are pretty useful and helpful, and you're able to provide kind of value to consumers in a novel way, but also that like kind of delivers. It's not just for the novelty's sake, but it can actually kind of add value or help someone find the right product or help to book meeting rooms or something like that. The annoying things that sometimes have to happen on site manually, the kind of the movements in tech, again, especially in the last kind of 3 to 6 months, we're going to see a lot of these things streamlining and making our lives easier, hopefully, and allowing us to focus on the more important bits instead of just, booking meeting slots and all the rest of that.
No, it's cool. I think one thing that this makes me think of that I'd love to touch on here real quick is just it's a thought that I have that's like, as we came out of COVID, it was this like in-person versus virtual type thing, right? Well, virtual got a kick in the ass and some people figured it out. Some people didn't. But I think now as we're coming out of it, the way I see it is in-person and virtual are not really rivaling each other at all. They are two different things. They're both can be effective. Event marketers need to both figure out how to use it to their advantage. There's a lot of companies like yourself and others that are really putting virtual in the express lane and doing some super cool stuff that I have seen and people I have talked to. The other thing is, I think for people that are in live events is, to me, because virtual, it's going to get better. Look, technology doesn't go backwards. Okay. It goes forwards. Like, live by that principle. It's going to keep going forward. So for in-person, double and triple down on what in-person is versus what virtual is or is not. Meaning, in-person events are about like interpersonal connection, relationships, networking, those moments, those face-to-face, the I don't want to be weird, but like the smell, the touch, the being in the room, the environment, the interaction, right? That's what in-person is really about. So double, triple down in that space. And then as you get into virtual is a different experience, but they're both valuable. They both have a lane and they will both develop. So that's just a thought of mine that is, I'm listening to you talk, because there's things in here that I don't even know enough about. You know what I mean? So it's like things that people should have their head on about and understand. All right, let's get to next one. Ledger. I thought this one visually looks awesome, right? Love some of this. Why don't you kind of walk us through, this hardware wallet, by Ledger and kind of what they're doing?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, again, we're very much in events. First and foremost, we have a kind of team that does a lot of the more Web3 and avatars and content. But this is a really nice marriage of, a crypto, NFT, cold storage. It's called a hardware company who came to us really wanting to work with folks who both knew the event side as well as the culture within kind of Web3 and the rest of it. So Ledger really wanted to have an owned event, like think Google I/O or Apple's WWDC, obviously a little bit smaller scale than those two behemoths, but this would be an event that they could own during NFT.NYC week, which is something that happens every year. There was, keynote presentations, which we streamed both to Twitter Live as well as the Metaverse, which was fun, panel discussions, product drops and launches, like the hype beast, Bobby Hundreds from the Hundreds was there. They had collab Stadium Goods, VeeFriends, Gary Vee's NFT project, Sandbox, which is an metaverse world. Mike Shinoda was there from Linkin Park, which is super cool. He's such a nice guy, as an aside. So a bunch of cool kind of partner collab stuff. We had POAP there, POAP's proof of attendance protocol. Think Foursquare meets blockchain for those that remember Foursquare. So just a way to check in. You kind of get like an NFT token that you were there. That's a fun thing, not a huge lift that I think you'll see more and more becoming more and more prevalent, especially as NFTs stop being a bad word, which they've been in the last 8 months, and start getting turned back on. They're warming up again. We built a bunch of just cool stuff. I mean, you mentioned, and thank you, that the space looked amazing. We were in a pretty dope venue. Moonlight Studios had a bunch of the LED stuff in-house already, so we didn't build all of that. It used to be the Cadillac House, if anybody would have been there. I think it's closed for the last year or two. But cool space, and we did bring in a bunch of our own. We built LED model lists with two-way mirrors in there that was showing content. We had big custom product displays with acrylic and inlaid LED and screens and all the rest of it.
That visual piece I really like a lot of the acrylic and the glass and the product displays. It has a very techie, maybe techie's not the word, but the feel, the vibe, to me is like I know what Ledger is, right? And when I see this room and I see the alleyway and the way it looks and sets up, to me, it's like, man, this feels right. This feels, it's immersive.
Nice. Yeah. And thank you. And yeah, one of the actual kind of cool interactive bits actually leveraged the LEDs within that whole space. So we had taken one of the Ledger, they look like a USB stick almost, but it's a way to have your keys off of the blockchain. Anyway, we can get into that another day, but we took their actual Ledger cold storage device, sunk it in this block of resin. There was RFID chip in the bottom of it. And when you first walked in, the thing's there literally on a pedestal. And when people would interact with it, pick it up, have a look at the new piece of hardware, it would trigger all of the screens to kind of move in sync with it. So it actually changed the look of the room by interacting with the product, which is kind of a fun little move. And then, we used a XR stage for our keynote presentation. We didn't actually like use it the real way that, makes it look like you're in a metaverse world, but it was, LED floor, LED back wall. And we also had like a custom cube we built, like a display cube. We could walk inside, and the content within the room would actually be changed based on what happened throughout the day. So during one of the keynotes, they announced like the new NFT marketplace. And then when you came back out, all of those, the LED cube room, which had a certain look at the beginning of the day, then it was changed and was showcasing all of the NFTs, like a bit of like a reveal, and have the space actually kind of coincide with what's happening within the day and the announcements that are being made. So yeah, it was a fun one. It was also like, this is last year's NFT .nyc week, and like people were very much like out and just so happy to be out. And I think to your earlier point about it's not live versus virtual, like being in person is never going away. It is the creme de la creme, like being able to see the whites of people's eyes, shake hands, but it was really kind of beautiful, not to be cheesy, like to see people just so excited to, meet people for the first time that they've been, working with or communicating with in different social channels. And yeah, it was just super fun. People were just really stoked, excited to be out. And it was a really nice marriage of kind of technology, Web3, and IRL kind of all in one spot.
Yeah. It looks like it all came together. I mean, visually from these images, the engagement had very tech related, which I think is cool. And I'm just a big believer that when you're doing in-person events, whether it's a trade show booth, an event, an activation, whatever it may be, like I said, it's something about the feel of a room. It's like you just feel it when you walk in it, like, there's a vibe, there's an energy. It's like a restaurant, right? I always use the example in Vegas at the Cosmopolitan, Beauty in Essex. I don't know if you've ever been to that restaurant, but the front of it's a pawn shop. And then when you open the door and you go into the restaurant, I just love it. It's like dark and there's a hallway, but there's music. It's just a cool vibe, the energy. And like events to me have energy. They're immersive. They have energy, and the really good ones get it right. This is a good one. Nice work here.
Thanks.
Steve Madden summer launch party. This imagery looks very Steve Madden to me. Why don't you tell us about this one?
For sure. And yeah, I think we were trying, when we picked these out or when we were talking ahead of the show, we were trying to get like a different type of of event for each. This is more like a party, as a product launch party. We had the target were really, influencers and media folks. As you said, it was very on brand. We had, the 180 array booth and like the photo moments, and the color palette was spot on for them. The music was, to your earlier point of like that vibe. It's the smell, it's the lighting, it's the music. It's so big. It's the type of people in the room. Like I felt very out of place as a 40-year-old dude, where like everyone was just fabulous and well dressed and
Frank,
cool.
You're not cool anymore.
I know.
You hit it. You just can't be cool anymore.
As a human being, I've jumped the shark apparently. But yeah, you could just tell it was the cool kids in the room, which was awesome. And I think that the one outside the box element of this was, in addition to, having a live DJ, Charlie Jordan, who's like, again, another fabulous influencer in her own right, as well as DJ. We also had two kind of cool elements. One was like piercings. So we're actually piercing people within the party, and then giving real tattoos with ephemeral tattoos. I don't know if anybody else has gotten the Instagram ads are doing a pretty good job, but they're a new tattoo product and company where you can get a tattoo and it's a real like ink, needle, whole nine, but it fades after like 3 or 4 years. So we were the first brand partner to like work with them. We actually had my nanny's son helped invent the ink. And so like we pulled my nanny call her son to be like, hey, let Frank's brand do this thing, because they hadn't worked with anybody up until then. Again, not to give away the tricks of the trade, never know.
Yeah.
Kind of in is going to get you a green light, but it was fun. Yeah, I think like 15 or 16 folks have got actual tattoos on site, and we did some piercings, and Steve actually showed up and really had a good time, and it was just a fun a fun event. It was very on brand for them. Got a lot of good press and media pickup, and of course everybody that came left with some free shoes because it's Steve Madden.
Got to. So I have a few thoughts on this one. One is, I love how you put results in here, and part of the results is 16 semi-permanent tattoos and 47 ear piercings, right? As part of the result. What I love about that is it's know your brand, right? Know, like, this is the brand. It speaks to the audience, speaks to the people. It's very on brand. So that's like a like a cool little element into this of what was available, what was there, what the engagement was. And I would think that the more of those that happened, the better that Steve Madden would feel about the party, right? Like it's silly, but it's not. The next thing that makes me think about being experiential in events is brands, when they work with a good agency, right? And ones like yourself, you can put on a great event that has this aura to it that is so on brand, spot on. Everything makes sense in the room and the way it goes. I've been saying this for a while now, is like I'm trying to push brands, when they're running B2B events, user conferences, smaller micro events, different, your traditional conference, smaller type, even like big annual trade shows now, and these associations and organizations running them, is what's the personality of your event, right? Like, because a brand is thinking of this, and this is stuff that gets press because they are cool. It does have a feel. Whereas a lot of events, they don't have this feel. The bigger ones, the conferences, they're not diving into what should this look like based on the audience or based on, does the event have a brand? Like the best example is Dreamforce has done it. They've created their own brand with this Dreamforce thing that now is the personality of this entire show. And more people putting on events or event marketers, people need to be thinking this way and trying to set stuff up like this. I firmly believe that.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a good shout. Like, thinking about the space too, this is like an empty raw space, but to your point, like you could be in a ballroom in the Venetian, which you might think is devoid of culture or vibe or whatever else. And it's our jobs really to bring that vibe, bring that personality,
bring it to life.
Know your client, know your audience, know what they're going to be excited to see when they walk in. We do after parties at trade shows for clients. And it's like, yeah, what's their vibe? Like, what kind of, is it dancing on tables with cowboy boots? Is it, is it sleek and refined, and like really trying to match that demographic and match that. The personality is a really nice word for it. Like almost like when you're talking about those, who is our target demo, and like coming up with those personality types, and then building an event and designing it with those folks in mind, and that palette in mind. Yeah.
What do they want? What would be cool, right? I mean, it has to be so audience focused. And I mean, for a brand like Steve Madden, I don't want to say it's easy, but I think it's obvious. You just have to make sure you don't do anything stupid, and you got to hit a home run and double, triple down on it, right? But some of these other, like I said, the events I mentioned, they do need to come up with event personality. And I think you should be considering like, who is the audience? Who are these people? And maybe they're a group of doctors and you want to mix stuff up a little bit, and you want to make it unique, and you want to get them out, and you want to get them to do a little bit of partying. They may love that, but if you know the audience, you can really decide what that looks like. Just popping in the chat here, I see Bill, you're saying the age thing. Yes, at Coachella next week for an activation at 45 years old, old man walking. Yes, Bill, at Coachella, you are a dinosaur. Okay. So good luck there. I'm 37. I would feel like a dinosaur at Coachella. I'd be looking for some kind of band for VIP access and air conditioning or something like that, right? Alan Goldman says, where was the Madden event activated, Frank?
It was a first floor venue. I would need to look it up. It was in Manhattan.
No worries.
There was actually a freight elevator. I guess one thing about the venue that I can tell you, there's a freight elevator that allowed you to like load things in off the street and then go up to the other floors. We actually like bribed the venue to let us use the freight elevator as our entrance. Mm-hmm. And we actually like treated it was like kind of industrial. Again, Steve Madden, you said it's a little bit easier. They do have a little edgy look. So they actually appreciated that. So we like leveraged that. Instead of going in through the normal entrance, we went in through a freight elevator. We had these kind of flaps, these like almost like car wash flaps. We then projected onto a sunrise or sunset. Super cool. That's how people kind of entered into like this more kind of dynamic and different way to, enter the space. So yeah, it was kind of a bare blank white room, high ceilings, and then the elevator entrance was our interesting touch.
Nice. Frank, let's talk a little bit about, I would love to know kind of a little bit of the sauce, right? Like, what does your process look like for this stuff? what's kind of going on behind the scenes? What is your, I don't want to say framework. Maybe it's a framework. Maybe it's a way of thinking. Maybe it's a discipline that you guys have to be able to come up with these cool ideas. Obviously, the execution's a production thing. It's things that you've gotten used to, either skill sets or capabilities. But what about the strategy? What about the thought?
Yeah. I mean, every project's different, which is the beauty of our industry, or at least of our client mix. But as far as like coming up with that executional idea, I think it's starting with, like you said earlier, at the beginning of the call, it's like starting out with that why. Like, why are we doing this? What are the KPIs we're trying to deliver on? Who is our audience? Like, is the brand just trying to like get out and show the world that they're still cool and relevant, or from a like just brand recognition standpoint, are they trying to sell product, create signups? Like, again, so figuring out what they're trying to do and accomplish by that event. Because if we do this cool event that everyone thinks is so fun, but it doesn't deliver on what the brand's trying to achieve, then it's a fail. So it's starting with that. It's then doing our homework and digging in competitive landscape. What have their competitors done? What has happened recently? This is not secret sauce, but it's true. You know, imitation is the finest form of flattery. The amount of Yayao Kusama affinity rooms that have been created by folks in our industry is in the thousands. So some of it's also, seeing like what other cool stuff's happened out there and being inspired by it, and, you know, elevating it. And like, how can we take this new cool AR tech that Nintendo's using on the Wii and like bring it to our event for Caterpillar trucks or whatever it is. So like figuring out the why for the brand, digging into what they're trying to do. Two, it's keeping an ear to the ground on like what that new is, you know, whether that's, you know, avatars or cool AR. And I think there's a lot of AR that isn't that cool, you know, trying to know what tools are out there already and then trying to reinvent the use of those tools or the combination of those tools. I think that could be a way. And then really it's like working with and creating a space for the team to be safe to come up with crazy ideas. Like some of the stuff that we end up executing, if you're in certain rooms in certain companies, they'd be like, get out of the room. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, we're not driving a hot tub down Duval Street. Again, that idea didn't come from us, but you know, the team needs to be able to throw some of these kind of crazy ideas out there. And you know, you mentioned like not throwing just crap at the wall, but sometimes like it's okay to really like, let's throw a lot of stuff out there. No bad ideas in a brainstorm. It's cliche, but and then taking that and then pressure testing those ideas against what are the KPIs? What are we really trying to accomplish? Is this the right time to be doing this within the social political climate? Like, which is another bit, like we're working with a household music brand down in DC in 2 weeks. And like, we had to look through every creative idea through the filter of, you know, there's like high level statesmen and women that will be there. We had to look at it through the lens of like, are we overdoing it? Is this too over the top? Could the press take this and turn on our brand? Like, look at how much they're spending. Like, so sometimes there's interesting constraints that you don't even, you wouldn't think of right off the bat, but so making sure that you're not being tone deaf and that you're doing things at the right time, looking at that landscape, what else is happening that time of year or over that weekend, and trying to come up with ideas that are novel, but that still deliver for the brand, that will be kind of remembered for like the right reasons, like not, you know, not just being silly or out there, just
I like
being out there.
I like what you're saying there. And I think on the idea piece, what, you know, it is these ideas that like you want funky, different, big thinking ideas. It's just a matter of like, how does it tie back to everything you just said? The why, the KPIs, the goals, what are we really trying to accomplish here? And it's like, if you can connect the dots for people and just step outside the bounds a little bit, I mean, you're really cooking with fire there. Like you can do some cool stuff. Question here from Bill. How does TXG look for tech inspiration? And how do you push back to clients who want something bright and shiny and new when tech doesn't match the audience?
So as far as like keeping up with tech, you know, there's a number of, you know, Discord's like kind of, how do you describe it? Web3, Reddit, I guess would be a good way to describe it. That a lot of like the very much crypto NFT combos happening there.
Yeah.
There's great organizations and resources within that. There's more prosumer consumer versions of this in podcast land, like this one, in, you know, newsletters. You know, there's Milk Road for crypto. There's some good AR VR ones. There's, who are the guys? I could send through a few resources actually to you, Matt, afterwards, a few links if we want to like kind of put it in the notes for folks to check out. But that's, you know, again, I'm not a crypto NFT avatar expert per se, but it's knowing what's happening. It's being part of those conversations. It's staying in touch with those folks. And then a lot of just our network, whether it's a network of friends and individuals, as well as, some partner kind of agencies that are specialized in certain bits and bobs. And then as far as pushing back on clients, so a lot more times than not, we're the ones kind of letting them know it's out there. Like we just had a client that was like, oh, we want to make a big billboard and have a giant QR code. And I was like, all right, but what does a QR code do? They're like, oh, it brings you to a website. I'm like, well, we could do that, but like, let's have it also do like cool stuff. I keep trying not to curse. Cool stuff. And like, you can have it become live through your phone and like, have AR go over it. So like some of it's, taking those like little specks of ideas that maybe have come from the client or come within the creative process and think about, hey, what digital arms and legs could be added on to this, whether it's to make that experience cooler in the moment and for the folks who are there, and or making it something that could be amplified out or seen by folks that are in Nebraska or somewhere else, some other market. So a lot of times we're the ones bringing it. If a client does have like, an idea that it's maybe tone deaf or just doesn't really deliver. Yeah. I think it's a little bit of the sleight of hand. You're like, oh, okay. Like I hear that. Like, don't say that's a bad idea, but I hear that. But like, what if we looked at this as an option as well? And then when you show the two kind of next to each other, like, oh wait, that one's probably one we should do, right? And we're like, yeah, like let's go that way. So you never want to hurt any feelings. No bad ideas in a brainstorm for clients either. Sometimes and oftentimes clients know their brand better than anybody. So that's another thing. Like, you're talking about the creative process. I think either including the client in some modicum of back and forth, or making sure that the brief that they give you is very complete so that you really know what the client's trying to do. Like if you get this kind of piecemeal brief and then you're going and you're connecting a lot of dots on your own or making assumptions, then like, when the creative or the ideas come back to the client, like, you kind of missed the mark a little bit. So I think really asking the right questions during the brief, really knowing what the client's trying to do is going to make sure that the ideas you come up with are in line with what they and their maybe superior stakeholders want, as well as what the brand and the company kind of wants as a whole.
What's your thought on, I have pushed this topic a lot lately, which is this idea of treating trade shows, events, brand activations like campaigns. Because I think a lot of people don't treat them like campaigns, right? They treat them like one-offs. They treat them like an individual thing. Campaigns get love. They get attention. They get strategy, thought, execution, goals, measurement, post-show follow. Like it all encompasses to me. What's your thought on when you're going into something like this, treating it, like I said, like a campaign? And like, where do you think are some of the most important pieces in that people miss, that you see in events, activations, and trade shows and things like that?
I love that. I think that it feels like it's an obvious thing, but I do think in reality, it ends up being a different team doing the trade show than out of home. Yeah. And traditional, like it needs to be integrated. At the end of the day, you need to be able to look at the trade show booth and then turn around and look at the billboard ad, across the highway, and it needs to look like the same company. And if it doesn't, that's a big red flag. So maybe that's super obvious, but like making sure that the messaging, the look, the feel, and look and feel isn't just logos and brands and colors. It's also like the type of people you have working the booth. It's the music that's playing in there. It's like that vibe, back to the vibe, like making sure that the vibe you get from watching their TV spot is the same vibe you get by walking into their trade show booth. So 1,000,000%, I think it needs to be integrated. Otherwise, you're almost like marketing in a vacuum. Like the point and the benefit of integrated campaigns is that they all kind of like build on each other and have synergy and create this bigger thing and all act as one unified voice. And by, if they're not unified, then you're really missing a trick. So whether, we're lucky sometimes with some of our larger agency partners, they're actually running a TV campaign. They then brief us to either come up with or to execute a general idea that they've come up with. And it very much ladders into the larger campaign. But if it's not, if you're getting briefed, as a trade show executor for a certain brand, do your homework. If the client's not telling you, ask. Like look at the stuff they've launched in the past year. Ask like, hey, is there an upcoming, initiative? Like, and can we see it? We'll sign an NDA. We'll do whatever you need. But like, we need to know how you guys are going to be talking about yourselves in January when we go to the show in January. So like, let us know that and let that be part of the, the briefing. Again, not just from color palette, not just from the things printed on the SEG or whatever, but like also from a vibe and a feel or personality, to use your term, Matt, is really important.
Yeah. No, I think it's something I've noticed a ton, right? Where trying to push people to think more that way, act more that way. I think one of the biggest problems not biggest problems in our industry, but one of the things I've noticed is essentially what confuses me is, trade show, event, activation, face-to-face, these budgets that companies have are typically by statistic that I've seen from exhibitors, CEIR, like all the research, right? Is like they are 20 to 40% of their total marketing budget. That's a huge number. Yet so many companies are spending 20 to 40%, and they don't have a true event marketer running the program. They just take somebody, an associate, a marketing person, and they throw them in the saddle. And that person is really left to kind of like fight for their life and not be able to go gain this high level stuff we're talking about, where you can execute event marketing, go get results, whether it's impressions, brand awareness, leads, funnel, moving people through your funnel, right? Whatever it is, that's something that I essentially said is always mind-boggling, I guess, really. All right, Frank, I know you have a hard stop at 2, which is good because I do like to keep this show to like 60 minutes because it's the middle of the day, and it's even just getting the number of people that we get here to talk about this stuff is excellent. One parting thing I think I would kind of ask here at the end of this to you is, what's your advice for the event marketer working for a brand, a company that wants to pitch experiential, wants to pitch doing their trade shows differently, wants to pitch doing their events differently, and more in line with the kind of conversation we've had today? What's your advice for them? Where should they start? Where should they look? What should they be trying to do?
For sure. I mean, managing up is the whole thing. I think we could probably talk about that for a whole podcast. But I think, brand side marketers, leverage your partners, call your agency, call Matt, call me, have us talk through it. Like we have tons of, insights, experience, analytics we can point to. Again, if the CFO's in the room, they love the analytics. It works. I mean, experiential marketing is the reason Matt and I are lifers. And I think a lot of people probably on this call is because it's such an impactful and a useful mode of marketing. It cuts through the BS. You can't fast forward it. You can't ignore it. And the depth of those connections and the ability to really create a believer or an advocate is just, it's immense compared to other forms of marketing. So I think like the data is all there. I think if you're trying to make that campaign internally, it's not a losing battle. Like I think it's one that you can and should win. And then as far as like trying to do things differently, do things that are, not the same way we've done it the past 5 years, I think you need to. You owe it to your brand, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your consumers. Not to be preachy, but if 15 years ago, when I started in the industry, doing any kind of event would be like, oh, cool. Like they did a pop-up, like, oh shit, that's so cool. They're on Broadway. Now, like it's been done by everybody. It's still effective, but you want to do it in a way that's authentic for your brand, that's going to get people to maybe stop and take a picture of the dolphin riding Santa Claus in the airport, whatever it might be, or the interactive windows that's at the pop-up. Like you need to kind of add a little sizzle to the steak in order to get people to stop, to spend their hard-earned or their finite attention on your brand, on your experience. So you can't just kind of do everything the same way it's always been done. And I think that happens a lot of times with trade show work. And like we always try to like take, because we have a growing and sizable trade show business, and it's really trying to take that trade show and still create the same magic within that show floor as you should have at a pop-up space or at a Madison Square Park for an outdoor event. Like don't sell yourself short just because you're in that ballroom in Venetian or you're on the show floor of LBCC. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have a cool interactive element. Doesn't mean you shouldn't have something that's fun and that gets people to like kind of stop and get into the booth. And again, not just fun for fun's sake, but like have it tie into the the brand and what you're trying to achieve. So I think just in general, people are, jaded might not be the word, but a little bit jaded by the traditional marketing techniques. Again, they could skip over stuff or ignore stuff. So you really want to like show that you get it as a brand. You want to approach consumers in a both unique and an authentic way that feels right coming from you as a brand, but you do it in a way that is novel, is different, and then it's going to get people to stop, pay attention, and hopefully share, which is the kind of the gold standard these days. And get people to become advocates.
It's good stuff, man. That was a great answer. Not that it needs my exclamation point on it, but it was really good. Frank, this was a ton of fun. The projects that you execute, the stuff we showed today, very thought-provoking, engaging, meaningful, all the BS buzzwords that I hear flying around our industry. You guys are doing it. I think it's really cool. You kind of walk the walk. So great stuff. Just so everybody knows, we have a live show in 2 weeks on the 12th, same time, same place. And then 2 weeks following that, the April 24th, 5th, and 6th, we, Rockway Exhibits and Events, will be at Exhibitor Live in Louisville, Kentucky, and we will be running our podcast at that trade show for 3 days in a row. So we'll have some really cool content coming out of the trade show and event marketing trade show that we'll hope for you to enjoy, and we're going to try to find a way to go live there. Actually, Ish just told me we have a live show next week on the 5th, not the 12th, excuse me. So anyway, we will be sending out emails. Same way we got a lot of people on here today. Frank, thanks for coming on, man. It was a really fun conversation. I appreciate you coming on.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Anybody out there in podcast land, feel free to reach out if you ever want to chat or talk shop. That's what we love.
Awesome.
Love doing it.
Awesome. Everybody who came in today, everybody took time out of their day, an hour. Really appreciate you. And hopefully we see you next time. Thanks again, everybody.